So here's a practical application post for my episode on squat science with Sean Flanagan. A couple of my big takeaways. One, first off, how would we define the squat? So he would put it in a broad category of flexion and extension lower body exercises. So pretty much it's a triple flexion. You're lowering yourself down to the ground, your hip, your knee, your ankle lower you down. Then you do the reverse to come back up, which is triple extension. He would not necessarily classify a squat as a knee dominant exercise because you're going to get contributions from the hip and the knee. You'll get more or less contributions depending on the type of squat you're doing. If you think about, for example, back squat versus front squat, etc. Another big takeaway is technique. So depending on, your body type, maybe your, how long your limbs are, and then depending on, for example, the type of squat you're doing, lateral squat, front squat, whatever, you're going to have, technique vary slightly. But he said there's two big takeaways to consider no matter what type of squat you're doing. One, when you're lifting with load, you don't want to have flexion or extension. You don't want to have too much movement at the spine. You want to maintain a neutral spine. The other one is you do not want to have valgus collapse, which is the knees caving inward. Those are two big things to avoid no matter what type of squat you're doing. When it comes to health and longevity, it's important to consider variety. You don't want to hammer away, for example, at just a back squat for 5 years straight, unless you're a power lifter and that's your sport, but you want to incorporate a variety of squats and change it up every now and then. Maybe you do the front, the back, a sandbag squat, whatever it is. When it comes to the resting squat, now the resting squat is pretty much a squat with no load. You're just kind of hanging out there. You could be more of a recovery type of position or a position that you're doing something, maybe using the bathroom, you're washing yourself, whatever it is. But when you're in a resting type of squat, he said it is okay to flex the spine. It's good to have the spine move. Think about dance. You can move in a variety of ways, but when you put load on your back, all of a sudden you don't want to be doing creative types of body movements, right? That's exactly what he's saying to avoid before. So the spine should move, but of course when there's no load there, and when you're in a resting squat, there's no load, so that's fine. I would even add, and this is coming from me, the fact that not only is it okay, but it's encouraged to flex the spine slightly when you're in a resting squat. It puts the diaphragm in a better position to contract. It makes it a little easier to breathe. It puts on the parasympathetic nervous system. It just helps you to relax a bit more. Depending on what you're doing, if I'm listening to a video and I want to be very attentive, I might sit up a bit more straight. And maybe if I'm trying to recover, relax, I might get down in a deep squat and let the spine flex a bit. So the resting squat is different from a squat that has load. Another piece to consider is what muscles are you targeting in the squat? I know I hear people say I'm doing the squat for my glute, I'm doing it for my hamstrings. So depending again on the squat that you're doing is where you're going to get more or less contribution from certain muscles. For example, if your torso is more upright, you have more knee dominance, you're going to get more quad contribution. So if you think about, for example, he said a tap down, so you're standing on top of a box, or if you think about when you're walking down steps, right? But he said you're on the box and you tap the heel on the ground and you come back up. But as you're walking down steps, you're going to get a lot of quad contribution. As the hip goes back into space and the torso tilts forward, you're going to get more of that glute activation. You think about a bridge, for example, the hip is going back and forward. And then you think about a stiff-legged deadlift, so your leg is a bit straight, the torso is tilting forward. Think about a toe touch where you feel a hamstring stretch. There you're going to get more hamstring contribution. So generally speaking, if you look at the squat, you can kind of see if there's more or of which of those types of things I described. You might understand more of what muscle is probably dominating or contributing more so to that type of squat. Now, back squat has more hip hinge, so you're going to get more glute activation. The front squat is more upright. You're going to get more quad activation. So just some things to consider there. The last piece about single leg versus bilateral, and for that one he said, doing a bilateral squat is probably good for time efficiency. There are some cases though where it is very important to incorporate single leg squatting. I personally like to do it for a variety of reasons, but the one that he mentioned was for people coming off an injury. Anytime, so we all pretty much use our dominant side more, but anytime that difference becomes more than 10% is when you want to kind of maybe be a little more concerned. One of the studies that he did was, a study of participants where they were in their teens, maybe 15%, and he said he wasn't so worried about it, but it's more so people that come off an injury and never reload that other side. So you want to have a little more of a conscious, decision to incorporate single leg work, if you're coming off of an injury. So those are a couple of my big takeaways. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was a little more long-winded, but a lot of gems, and check out the episode.